Good afternoon, and good morning, and good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the session titled National Programs and Global Coordination. We move to the next slide, please, Alex. So with me today, I have a stellar of panelists, Bernard Barani, the Deputy Head of Unit, Director General of the Connect Department of the European Commission, Marcus Mook, Vice Chair of ETSI Board and the Chair of the ETSI Board RISE, Arturo Escora, Director General for Telecom and Audio Visual Services at the Ministry for Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation in Spain, Mohamed Lari, the Head of Cross-Government and International Coordination, 5G Trials and Testbeds at the UK Department for Culture, Media and Sport, and Janne Järvinen, the Mission Lead, Digitalization at Business Finland. I am Alain Mourad, the Senior Director at Interdigital, and I'll be moderating the session today. I will kick off the session next with setting the stage kind of introduction. And we'll then move with a 10 minutes presentation from each of the speakers so that they can actually share their perspective on the national programs or, let's say, the regional program, like in the case of Bernard, and also ETSI, the ETSI pipeline of technologies as presented by Marcus. And once all speakers would have presented their 10 minutes presentation, we will then have a panel at the end where we'll be getting questions and answers, questions from the audience answered live by the panelists. All right, so with this, we can move to the next slide, please, Alex. So essentially, to set the stage, the consensus is already actually gathering and emerging, especially through the efforts that are building up globally at the International Telecommunication Union in their effort around IMT 2030, Vision and Technology Trends. And that global vision that is emerging is actually endorsing the need for 6G, especially that there are use cases that are anticipated in the next decade or so that clearly cannot be supported with 5G today, right? There is also a clear roadmaps on existing use cases today in 5G that are either merging or combining or demanding an expansion in the performance indicators that 5G has delivered so far. So essentially that vision, the global vision as it is emerging through the ITU global activity is pointing in the direction of immersive, inclusive, sustainable connectivity that is all augmented with intelligence and sensing. So this is a lot of keywords, obviously touching upon multiple technology domains, but not only technology domains, government policies, regulation, that we will all touch upon in this panel. So if we move next to the next slide. So in the same way as the consensus emerging around a global vision for 6G, there is also consensus seemingly also emerging around the timeline and the way we go about designing and trialing 6G. So various programs have already launched, and that's why we have a number of panelists today who will talk us through their national program 6G and how they are going about the research that's going on there, as well as importantly the European Commission 6G program that has launched and is expected to leverage upon the national programs and go, with a global agenda. There are key milestones that are already set out, as we can see, for example, through the ITU IMT 2030 around the vision that has already started, the requirements that are coming towards the 2024, 2025. And some already, I would say speculation or forecast for specification bodies like 3GPP to kind of approach a very first specification on 6G shortly after the middle of this decade, so shortly after the 2025. So with this, if you move to the next slide. So essentially, all stakeholders in the 6G system or ecosystem, they are already actually active in incubating 6G one way or another. So here on this slide, you see multiple fora who are really focused on the vision and the requirements of 6G. For example, NGMN, ITUR, as I mentioned earlier, but also key bodies or vertical bodies like 5G Asia, 5G AA. So all working closely hand in hand into, if you like, outlining the vision and the service scenarios and the requirements, if you like, for 6G. In parallel, multiple of the key, if you like, research and innovation programs, be it the Horizon Europe 6G SNS program, that's represented today by Bernard, or the European National 6G Fora, represented in this session by Arturo for Spain, Mohammed for the UK, and Yanne for Finland, but also worth mentioning additional programs as well in Europe, like in Germany and France. So we'll look into these. There are also obviously programs going in China, Japan, Korea, so multiple 6G fora that bring an international dimension to the 6G governed programs, if you like, and also in the United States with the 80s NGA, the Next Generation Alliance, of course, added with all the in-house research and innovation that happens with the companies and the industry stakeholders. And the third pillar actually here is pretty much around the standard bodies, the pre-standard and the standard bodies. And these are not sitting idle. I mean, these bodies are already actually incubating 6G one way or another through their pre-standard activities. And here we have on the panel, Marcos representing ETSI, where ETSI is really active on pushing the pipeline of activities, research activities to pave the way for standardization of these activities for 6G. But also we have in the IEEE, in the IETF, and also partially in 3GPP, because even if 3GPP doesn't speak of 6G today, it is expected that the 3GPP 6G will build upon 5G Advanced in the current releases that's happening in 3GPP. So with this stage set, and without any further delay, I will hand over to Bernard to take us through the European Commission 6G SNS program. Bernard, over to you, please.
So many thanks, Alain. I suppose you can hear me, it's okay. First of all, many thanks to the organizers for inviting a representative of the European Commission to speak at this very, very interesting and exciting event. So on my side, I am working in the European Commission DG Connect in a division called Future Connectivity Systems, where we have basically the responsibility for the 5G policy and also preparing for 6G. So 6G is not a new subject because we have been working on it for more than 3 years now. So next slide, please. And I will tell you about the view we have on 6G at this moment in time. So first, we believe we are in a very interesting situation at this moment in time because 6G activities all over the world, and there are many regions, as Alain said, which are involved in 6G development, and several EU member states as well, as we will see with Arturo and Yanni and so Mohammed. We have at this moment in time an activity which is primarily focused on research and innovation. And this is very interesting because it means that we don't yet have, maybe it will come at some stage earlier or sooner or later, I don't know, but we don't yet have a very strong commercial pressure as we had at the beginning of 5G, where operators declared very early in the process that they wanted 5G available by that date for that Olympic Games or for whatever kind of set date. And this is something which provides us with a little bit of a window of opportunity to really think what it is that we want to do with this new technology and what kind of technologies we want to develop. So we don't yet have a globally established vision, as was said before. It's coming, but we know that the ITU is still to deliver that. In Europe, we has worked with the, let's say, a previous initiative called the 5G public-private partnership to develop a vision, which was delivered in June 2021, which is basically based on the coming together of the digital, the physical, and the biological world, very much in line with the presentation that you have seen this morning from Ericsson, for instance, where the scenarios are based on massive digitization of the surrounding world, digital twinning, and intelligent connectivity between all these events, where you could imagine scenarios where a fully digitized intelligent city could provide you with information about the traffic in real time, and you can take some dedicated actions on how to optimize the traffic against pollution or against minimized energy consumptions or against whatever type of thing. So it's a very powerful vision. And behind this vision, there are, as was said already this morning, a lot of technologies which are being investigated worldwide with basically a number of targets. I'm not pretending I'm showing all of them now, but we have, first of all, two types of targets in the application domain, which is basically to do a little bit beyond what 5G can do. So that's the evolutionary path, but also to bring into the game a new revolutionary type of applications that previous generations cannot do. And this is very much related to this immersive digital twin type of applications. There is a step change in performance, which is contemplating across the board, from the radio side, from the network side, from the service side, from the management side, with application of new technologies such as AI, blockchain, or whatever. And sustainability, as was said this morning, comes very strong on the agenda of 6G. Now, we have, in our view, a kind of changing landscape that we have to consider compared to the past. And here again, I have only put a few elements which we have to consider in our program, which are the changing importance of connectivity networks. We have seen with all the discussion on cybersecurity around 5G networks that more and more policymakers are considering these infrastructures as strategic infrastructures for the welfare of society and economy. And we have seen it with the pandemic and with all sorts of actions all over the world. So this is a bit a new type of consideration. We see from the technological perspective something which is very much coming across, which is the importance of softwareization and virtualization of networks, which is also bringing, let's say, new type of problems. This morning was talked about convergence, but you can see it also from the perspective of heterogeneity and multiple of domains and environments and technology to reconcile, to get it all working together. And from our side, from the policy point of view, we see very much larger importance in our programs of microelectronics and the need to work across the value chain from the microelectronic component up to the service delivery, rather than concentrating on connectivity platforms as we did for 5G PPP. So next slide, please. So on that basis, what did we do? Last year, we already started with a set of 10 exploratory projects beginning of January 21, which you see here on the top right of this slide, with a so-called flagship project, ExaX, which is working on the vision and which is working on the underlying technologies, and the other projects working on, let's say, dedicated elements or dedicated technologies, such as reflective intelligent surfaces or intelligent places of functions or whatever, you name it. And now this brings us into the new, let's say, initiative that we have just launched end of last year, which is the so-called joint undertaking 6GSNS, Smart Networks and Services, which will have a legal existence that has been created by a council regulation. We will put as a commitment from the public side 900 million, which will be matched by the equivalent amount from the private side. We want to use this platform and this vehicle to also coordinate as much as we can with the member states to try to optimize the national investments and the EU investments. And this SNS vehicle for us will be the main vehicle for European and international cooperation, because we believe this is something very important. Next slide, please. Voila. So in terms of timeline, I would not go too much into the details, but basically these kinds of confirm the window of opportunity that I mentioned. If standardization is supposed to start at the level of studies around 2025, it means that we have now taking also account what happened in the past already a few years ago and what is happening now, we really have a very strong opportunity to nurture both the vision and the technological opportunities or technologies that we want to develop to make our European industry competitive and sovereign, because this is one of the objectives of the EU these days, is to have more say in the overall technological perspective. So next slide, please. We are now at the level of having launched our first SNS work program, for which we have received about 130 proposals. Now, I will just concentrate on the right-hand side, which is the dedicated 6G part. You can see that in this dedicated 6G part, we have 4 main block of activities, plus a kind of a system project, which is the cross-strand holistic project, as it's named. Now, system architecture and trustworthy and secure service development and provisions, I would say they could be synthesized through 3 keywords, which is heterogeneity, scalability, and sustainability. Heterogeneity, because the underlying idea behind the work is that more and more we believe that networks will be integrated and developed across heterogeneous domains, be it in a vertical, in a CSP, in a neutral host, in a hyperscaler. So you will have network functions distributed all over the place, which makes the possibility to have an end-to-end view and full orchestration of all the resources which are coming across, including the computing resources, as was mentioned this morning several times, a little bit more challenging, taking into account that the new set of applications we are considering will push scalability at its limit and will also push new architectural elements such as edge computing, and will push new type of views on architectures, which is also the case of sustainability, where ideas are now floating around against the evolution of the service-based architecture of 5G to support this type of new requirements. And it's the same for the trustworthy and secure service development. Here, the heterogeneity of the many domains you have to cut across brings a real challenge to the ensuring end-to-end security. So the 2 other strands, wireless communication technology and signal processing, they are very much related to new radio technologies and the kind of things such as coming together of sensing and communications, and other communication infrastructure technologies looking into more detailed stuff such as non-terrestrial networks or let's say IoT type of communications. And from the onset, and this is something which is different from the past, from the onset, we try to build SNS experimental infrastructures, because we believe it's very important to start from the onset to build experimental capabilities to validate the technology. So next slide, please. Now, in conclusion, I would say that being in the RNI domain will give us a great expectation, great possibilities for collaboration across stakeholders. So it's really something we have to develop now. Targeting, of course, single global standards. This is the classical European position, such that we don't want fragmented standardization landscape in spite of all the geopolitical developments which might maybe hamper this from happening. We want, of course, to work on a common vision, but we believe it's not enough. Working on global ecosystems is also important. We have seen that the vision of 5G did lead to a priority in the ecosystem, which was EMBB. And now I think it will be very important to come together with the widest possible set of stakeholders worldwide to also agree that we have the same view on the priority ecosystems that we want to develop. Otherwise, we will have regions having different interests, which may not be optimum from the perspective of developing the right technologies. We believe that we have, from the European perspective, to develop the key technologies for competitiveness, but also for sustainability. And this will be a real challenge, I believe. And again, from the EU side, SNS will be our vehicle to stimulate global cooperation and global development. And this concludes my presentation. Many thanks for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Bernard, for all the nice perspectives. So we'll move now on with the presentation from Marcus to give us a bit of perspectives from ETSI side. So Marcus,
thank you very much, Alain, and thank you for the invitation to this panel today. So I think I can really build on the presentation by Bernard, because it is obvious that we have a highly efficient framework running in Europe in order to fund top-notch research. But one of the problems we have seen in ETSI is that researchers are being faced with the question, like, once that the research results are available, how do you take them towards industrial exploitation, right? And as ETSI, of course, we are providing a framework where stakeholders, not only industrial stakeholders, but also research stakeholders and academic stakeholders in general, or SMEs, can come together and actually jointly develop these next generation systems. And so we want to inform the research community really about this opportunity, and to reach our hand in order to help the research community and facilitate the access to our services. So next slide, please. So just a quick overview on ETSI. So we have over 900 members from 63 countries over 5 continents. And what's really dear to us and important is that we have a broad representation of the research community. So research bodies and universities correspond to about 14% of our members. And as a university or research organization, really through a single membership, all the representatives of your institution can participate to the ETSI activities. And not only in one specific technical area, but across all areas that are covered by ETSI. And as ETSI member, you would then have also equal rights and the right for direct participation to the standards making activities. And so I believe that ETSI here is really a kind of role model for being one of the most accessible and inclusive SDOs. Next slide, please. Yeah, so in order to further emphasize the importance for us to facilitate the access of the research community to ETSI as a platform to exploit research results and take it towards industrial exploitation, we have taken actions on the level of the ETSI board. And in particular, the ETSI board has set up several so-called strategy groups. So one strategy group is led by myself. This is the group RISE. So it's the Research and Innovation Standards Ecosystem. And in this group, we are reaching out to, I would say, almost all of the strong European research platforms and frameworks, and also some of the large scale projects. So, for example, we heard HexaX. This is one of the partners we are talking to, and the objective is really to listen to the needs of those communities, and to further improve the offerings that ETSI can give in order to provide a platform that is really meeting the needs of the research community. And just to let you know, we are currently in preparation of a questionnaire that is going to be sent out to exactly this community on a rather broad scale, in order to receive feedback on where we can improve in order to be an even more efficient organization to help you take your research towards industrial exploitation. And at the same time, we have another board strategy group, which is called Trend. And in this group, we are looking into the crystal ball in order to identify, where let's say the community sees technology evolving, and where ETSI as an organization that wishes to play a key role in this future field, including 6G, but also related to technologies that are possibly complementing 6G. It is very important for us to have at least some view on where things may be going. And of course, we have a department in ETSI that is able to support you in case that you have questions or comments, and or you need specific need in order to take your research to ETSI. And at the very last slide, I have included a number of contact addresses. So next slide, please. Yeah, so we have been working in 2021 on a so-called technology radar in ETSI. We have been trying to identify 10 of the most important technological trends. So it is the 2021 technology radar, but of course, you know, all of this is still early stage. It's not finalized at all. And I mean, if you have results that you believe may fit well into one of these areas, or also other areas, of course, we would be very interested in talking to you and to jointly engage in a discussion on how to possibly take advantage of this in ETSI. And I mean, just to give you a couple of hints. So I mean, the very first one, so mobile network evolution, is a very clear topic. I mean, we want to play a role in this future 6G ecosystem. I think we are organizational partner of 3GPP, so it's very clear that we leave it, of course, to 3GPP to define the access layer and yeah, and the usual components of the cellular system. But as ETSI, we may actually contribute to certain complementing services, like, for example, to provide a network functional virtualization framework, or to see, you know, how we can support you know, future 3GPP activities, for example, by preparing a characterization of the physical characteristics of terahertz or sub-terahertz communication, etc. So we are very open here to for discussions. And then you see, of course, that some of the activities also relate to ongoing policy activities. I think on a European level, we are currently having discussions on a future AI regulation. So it is of course a key objective of ETSI to get engaged into standardization work in the field of artificial intelligence and to support the European regulation. We have actually a lot going on in the policy field related to cybersecurity. We have the new NIS2 regulation, for example. We have ENISA working on the Cybersecurity Act. We are going to have EU 5G scheme going on, and we are obviously also supporting the European Commission in the implementation of the Radio Equipment Directive, where new cybersecurity related aspects are present. So a lot of fields where, you know, hopefully your research can fit in. So next slide, please. Then beyond the trends we had identified in 2021, we tried now to look even further into the crystal ball and to identify topics that are maybe even a little bit more out. And we have seen, you know, that photonics are becoming a very important playground for future communication systems. As I said, terahertz and sub-terahertz communications are becoming important. So we clearly see that, you know, the question whether to define an access layer is in the hands of 3GPP, but, you know, we are currently discussing whether it would be suitable to kick off an activity, you know, on the physical characterization of this, you know, determining the characteristics of multipath propagation, path loss, and so on, which would then be the technological basis to define the real system. Also, a very important field which is currently taking a lot of momentum is RIS, so reflective intelligence services, where you can really adaptively change the surface of a component in order to optimize its properties. And next slide, please. Yeah, so finally, to contact points. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to my colleague, David Boswarthik. He is the ETSI director taking charge of the ETSI NET department. And I think both of us, we are very willing to give you a hand in case you have questions or in case you're willing to take your research to Etsy. So that's all. Thank you very much, Alain.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Marcus. And we'll certainly keep you with us to discuss more on the engagement between the EU research and Etsy, how we can actually maximize impact next. So moving on, I would like to hand the floor over to Arturo. So Arturo, if you could take us through now.
So thank you, Alain. First of all, thanks for inviting me to present the Spanish programs in this area, and thanks for, like I say, allowing us to participate. So next slide, please. So I will present the actions in Spain in a top-down manner. So we have two big plans. One is our own Spanish plan called Spain Digital 2025, España Digital 2025, which is a very broad plan to deep and promote digitization in Spain. It's a 5-year plan from 2021 to 2025 included. And this plan was pre-existing to the recovery plan funded by the European Commission and European member states, which is the conventional recovery and transformation plan, recovery and resiliency plan, which is Plan de Recuperación, Transformación y Resiliencia, which is also 5 years, 2021 to 2025. And the relationship between both is that the European plan funds a substantial amount of the Spanish plan. So they are very, very related, and this is the relationship. So next slide, please. So now coming specifically to my own Directorate General, the Directorate General for Telecommunications and Audiovisual. The Spanish plan divides in 7 plans, out of which 3 are my responsibility, and we also have reforms. So what we do is both reforms and investments, and we think they are both very important. So in my Directorate General, we call this 3 plans, 3 laws, 3 plans, 3 laws. So we have to do 3 laws and 3 plans. The 3 plans are 2021 to 2025. One is a plan for connectivity, one is planned for 5G, and the third one is planned for audiovisual, which is not directly related to what we are talking today, but audiovisual is increasingly intermerging with telecommunications, also specifically in 5G and 6G. So we think it's very important to think on audiovisual in a broad way. We include extended reality and metaverse within audiovisual, and I think 6G and metaverse will have a lot to do. So we think they are both very interrelated, but if we think on so to say, classical view, it would be the connectivity plan and the 5G plan, the ones more related. Now, the funding of the plans are 5,900 million euros for the Spanish activities, and they receive 3,700 from the European Commission to be invested 2021-2023. So basically, the Commission is funding the short-term activities as a kind of a shock plan, and the Spanish plan complements with other funds for 2024-2025. The 3 laws are the cybersecurity law already approved. This is the transposition of the toolbox, the cybersecurity toolbox by the Commission. And then we have a new law on telecommunication and a new law on audiovisual, that they are both transposing the corresponding directives, and they are very, very short to being approved. So next slide, please. Now, our connectivity plan and our 5G plan are 3,600 million euros received from the European Commission. So this is 2021-2023. This is the short-term plan. And they developed under different, so to say, dimensions. So research, development, network extension, and demand promotion. And then on the other dimension, we have edge cloud, mobile network, fixed network, and ultra-rural coverage, what we call ultra-rural coverage. Now, focusing on research and development, this is the right side of the slide. So on the right side of the slide, we are funding 600 million for research and 730 million for development. And this is all under a single, so to say, brand, which is the UNICO program, the unique program. And UNICO means universalization of digital infrastructures for cohesion. Why? Because we want to promote cohesion, territorial cohesion, edge cohesion, industry cohesion. So we want a very, very cohesive plan, looking in all directions, but with a single integration aim. Next slide, please. So for the research and development plan, we have a very strong development plan of 700 million, and this is mainly for 5G. And what we want is to promote very heavily the development of 5G applications across all sectors. What we want is to make 5G a big success by promoting deployment of 5G and uptake of 5G. And to us, uptake of 5G is to fund the industrial software applications specific across all sectors. So applications for transport, applications for energy, applications for health, applications for agriculture. And we are thinking here industrial applications, because as we all know, 5G is not mainly for the smartphone. Of course, there will be 5G in the smartphone for consumers. Yes, good. This is an improvement. But the big new thing of 5G is for industrial applications. So we need video games, we need, like I said, tourism applications, industry, energy, transportation. This is our big thrust of 5G. Promote not only the deployment, also the deployment, of course, but the uptake. And we are thinking on 6G, which is the topic today. So now I'm focusing on 6G. Of course, we need to invest in 6G. 5G is a reality today. We have products, we have services. We still need to invest in 5G plus, because 5G is not finished. True, but we need to begin investing in 6G research. Like Bernard said, the Commission said, we already started on 6G a few years ago, same as we started on 5G in 2013. So these are long cycle research. So you need to start very, very, very well ahead of it being in the market. So we have a specific program on 6G research under the brand UNICO R&D. In UNICO R&D, we fund different aspects. We started last year with a program focused on public institutions in collaboration with companies. And this year we have a call for companies in collaboration with public sector. Next slide, please. So next slide, please also. So I'm focusing on UNICO R&D 6G. Like I said, last year call is around 80 million, and it's funding 113 projects, mainly for 6G, so long term. These are led by universities, but in collaboration, mandatory with companies. We want to follow the model by the European Commission that we like very much. We should fund almost always, not always, but almost always, collaborative research between public research centers and universities and companies. So public-private collaboration, because in this field, in addition to blue sky research, which also exists, we want research going fast to market through standardization. So I'm also linking with the previous speaker. So we need fundamental research, yes, but quickly transferred into products and services and standards. Now, the call in this year, 2022, is led by industry, but also in collaboration with public centers. So we want to fund collaborative research. The call this year is shorter term, so we are focusing on lower TRL, higher TRL, and therefore is more 5G plus than 6G. Last year call was very, very 6G, very long term. This year is slightly shorter term. So we are focusing now on 5G plus and 6G. We have two areas in the call this year, one for research infrastructures, very much oriented to only public centers, and then the projects, like I said, led by companies. The call on infrastructures will be very, very much aligned with ESPRI. ESPRI, as you know, is the program funded partly, but mainly by member states, led by the Commission, to fund pan-European research infrastructures. There is one on ICT, the first one ever, called SLICES. So we are going to focus much of our investment in infrastructure in SLICES, but not only in SLICES. So we want to be very, very aligned with the European Commission. So next slide, please. These are the main topics. The main topics look almost copycat to SNS, so you could say this is a duplication. It is not. If you look fine-grained, we are trying to fund small areas within these topics that are not directly addressed by SNS. So we call it something that is complementary to SNS and supplementary to SNS. So we were trying to be supplementary and complementary to SNS. So we try to find those borderline areas not directly addressed by SNS, but aligned with the priorities. And then we are also funding some areas in which Spanish institutions can receive some upfront fund to then apply also to SNS. So in this way, we consider it complementary and supplementary to SNS. It's very aligned in philosophy. Like I said, it's public-private projects, very much like the Commission. We try to have large projects. For Spain, projects are around 500,000 in the last call, but they are grouped in clusters of kind of 4 projects. So they arrive to a kind of 2 million per project, which is reasonably aligned with the philosophy of the Commission of impactful projects. Because in 6G, we are competing worldwide. We are not competing among Europe, luckily. What we are trying to do is to collaborate in Europe to compete with the US and with Asia. This is basically our goal. Next slide, please. Now, the characteristic of the call, I more or less already advanced, is high TRLs. We cover both industrial research and experimental development, which is the 2 big areas defined by GBER, but mainly focused on experimental development, but we cover both, led by private companies. It's possible to outsource 30% of the budget, so they can outsource to public research bodies up to 30%. Next slide, please. The aid intensity is exactly the one of GBER because it's what the state aids framework allow for. So this is copied exactly from GBER. So this is what we are doing. We can go to the next slide, please. And the tentative schedule is to have the publication of the call, of the 2022 call, very soon, end of June. We will allow only for 15 business days to submit applications because we need to inject the funding of the recovery plan as fast as possible into market. Because of this, we have already started doing advertising of this call. We already advertised it in Mobile World Congress, invited by the Commission. So we were very happy to be part of the session by the Commission. By the way, there we advertised also a mobility call that now is dead for different reasons I will not go into. So if anyone attended the Mobile World session, we said we intended to do a mobility call, but now it's dead. We only have now 2 sub-calls, infrastructures and projects. Everything else is very, very much the same. Next slide, please. And just to say that within our R&D program, we have research not only on 6G, we also have research on quantum communication that somehow is part of 6G, but slightly borderline. So we plan to invest 125 million in quantum communication, in addition to the 6G specific. We also plan to fund 150 on cloud research, which again is borderline to 5G, because to 6G, sorry, because again in 6G we will go into metaverse and there will be a lot of processing in the edge and possibly on the cloud and also on even fog. So this cloud fog edge 150 million also is somehow related, and 150 million on research for microprocessors that, like Bernard said formerly, is also related to 6G, because of course you need to support 6G on hardware. So you need more advanced microprocessors and more advanced photonics and more advanced hardware devices. So with this, I end my talk. Thank you very much. And I think next slide should be blank, hopefully.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Arturo. Much appreciated. And with this, we'll move to hear the perspectives from the UK with Mohammed Larry. So Mohammed, would you like us to take us through?
Perfect. Well, thank you again for the opportunity for joining this session, and of course, to present the UK's journey from 5G to 6G. And what I'd like to focus on today is largely how we're thinking about the sustainable commercial aspects of 5G moving on to future networks, including 6G. So it's a pleasure to be joining my esteemed colleagues today to share some of those details and how we're setting ourselves up, both from a policy perspective, but also eventual deployments of those future networks. For those who have yet to meet, I'm Mohammed Larry. I help strategize and coordinate the UK government's R&D investments in the telecom sector. And just over the last 5 years, and focusing primarily on research development, the UK's Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport has invested over 200 million in trialing emerging 5G applications and services, similar to what we just heard from our counterpart in Spain. And that's led to over 30 testbeds operating in the UK, across the UK geography and across sector. And that's been matched by both research organizations, businesses, and local governments. So the investment has actually doubled in size. Our aim over the last 5 years has been to build the business case for investment for deploying 5G and 5G advanced now, fostering a growing ecosystem of suppliers, customers, researchers, local governments, and policymakers, and working together within that ecosystem to help grow the new applications and services and the demand or the adoption of that to tackle some of the wider socioeconomic challenges. So of course, the greater burden of deployment isn't just around research development spend, but the cost is largely borne by operators and partners. Next slide, please. And the UK's ambition is underpinned by not just the technical advances of 5G to improve mobile coverage across the UK, but it is to enable that digital transformation of key economic sectors. And we focused on the manufacturing logistics sectors, health and social care, transportation, energy and utilities, agriculture, creative industries, just to name a few. And while the overall ambition for the UK has been to provide 5G connectivity to the majority of the population by 2027, a goal which has been met by UK mobile network operators, our drive is actually to ensure adoption of 5G by businesses and public services, fostering both the right partnerships to ensure economic recovery and growth, and the digital transformation that's necessary to introduce greater productivity and development of a digitally enabled workforce. It's not so much about coverage with 5G, what we're finding, it's rather the quality of the experience, whether it's for commuters and their desire to stream high definition videos or do a bit more augmented reality gaming on the go. But perhaps it's also more about new machine-to-machine communications in factory environments or logistics environments to support the manufacturing or distribution of batteries and components for, say, the emerging electric vehicles. So our policy and regulatory challenge is what is driving our motivation to spend, driving our motivation to co-opt with industry and public sector widely to ensure that the adequate coverage is met with the adequate quality that is on demand. Next slide, please. The sheer size of investment required to deploy 5G and 6G is not simple, right? So particularly as the decisions we've made ensures greater security and resilience of our networks, they come with added costs to the operators and suppliers. And so we have to be mindful of those costs as we venture into the future networks. Better understanding how the regulatory environment will shift and change, particularly with the emergence of network infrastructure and spectrum sharing, also causes us to pause to think about what does future networks mean for greater data protection and net neutrality, particularly when it comes to convergence of future networks, whether it's looking at terrestrial networks or non-terrestrial networks to provide greater coverage and capacity. In the UK and like elsewhere around the globe, a lot of the operators have started to deploy non-standalone 5G to bear with capacity in dense urban environments. That switch to standalone services to 5G core comes at an increasing cost, particularly with the architecture evolving to allow for greater softwareization, cloudification, and perhaps even edge compute where there is demand or there's commercial viability and demand. And some of these innovations will likely draw down costs for operators and perhaps even help reduce their energy footprint and their bills. But the hype of use cases needs to be met with a better understanding of the challenges and the demands by the user community. So our thinking for 6G is underpinned by what do we need to build today, whether that's the wireline network and the investment of about £5 billion to see the fiber optics deployed across the UK geography to make that backhaul available for networks of 5G, but also 6G. And that sheer size of investment required to get reliable 5G coverage and sufficient quality for tomorrow's society needs to be based on competitive pressures, both in terms of industry to be able to enable better debt to equity ratio for mobile networks to do exactly what they're enabled to do, but also to build in resilience within the infrastructure through new suppliers and perhaps through new open architecture as a mechanism to, again, bring down costs for the operators. There's, of course, the physical barriers of deployment that need tending to as well. And so we're working through smaller pilots with local governments to ensure that we can ease some of those planning permissions, that we can give access through universal frameworks rather than disparate regional deals. And all of this underpins what we're learning today from 5G to how we actually work together with industry, with academic researchers, with local governments to drive forward our vision for 6G. Next slide, please. Why we are so determined to get 5G deployment right with a view to future networks is for practical reasons. It's to enable a digitally induced socioeconomic benefit, both in our society, but also in our business and our public services delivery. It's evident over the last few years that the more we become digital, the more our economy becomes reliant on our digital economy. And for that, we need a sustainable, secure, resilient solution. We're keen to increase productivity, as I said, through our industrial sectors and public services to ensure that there is a sustainable footing to the ambitions of the network infrastructure. That not only are we drawing down the energy consumption and reaching goals for decarbonization and net zero emissions in the UK, but we're doing so where there is commercial traction. And that, of course, requires the need for these networks and to be built in areas where they may not be commercially viable, and the role for government to enable both the investment, but also the opportunity for deployment in rural locations, in road and rail corridors where perhaps the operators don't see net benefit today, and of course the key economic sectors that we see that there is a comparative advantage for the UK, and of course better delivery of public services. And last slide, please. So what does this all mean? The investment that we've made, both in research and development and deployment, alongside the investment the research community and industry have made, are key to us understanding what do future networks look like. We are enthralled with the vision that researchers have to drive down costs, increase resilience within the networks, and of course, increase what the networks are able to do in terms of capacity, but also enable a new digital society. But that transformation requires us to be clear about what challenges we're looking to address. And for 6G and future networks research to be coordinated through strategic prioritization, perhaps, where there is net benefit, not just to the infrastructure developers and the suppliers, but to their customers, the industry, as well as the larger populace. So from the UK government's perspective, what we're trying to do is coordinate this prioritization through developing a wireless infrastructure strategy to share a policy framework for meeting the wireless connectivity needs of the UK over the next decade. And we're looking at 2030 to 2040 as our sort of umbrella for what is required. And this is due to be published over the coming months. And just to give you a highlight, it covers three sort of strands. One I've already sort of focused on, which is driving the development in a way that meets the future connectivity needs of citizens, businesses, and public services. But secondly, ensuring that the UK industry is incentivized to invest and adopt future networks like 6G, building out UK capability that is reliant on open architecture and security from the ground up, taking into account the expertise that we have in quantum research and quantum communications, in photonics, and perhaps non-terrestrial networks and augmented and virtual reality scenarios, and artificial intelligence, machine learning, adaptive materials, and sensing technologies. Some of the key technologies that previous presenters have already mentioned, and the need to ensure that there is both a security and an integration layer to allow for those technologies to support the telecom sector. And finally, ensuring that there is a legal and regulatory framework that is fit for purpose to support the wireless innovations. That testing these principles through further research and development, perhaps through living laboratory environments, is going to be the driving force for what is commercially viable and, of course, what is sound for both the economic as well as societal benefit. UK academia and industry partners are already contributing a large sum of the industry's work in shaping what constitutes 6G networks. We're already contributing to some of the standard defining organizations, as well as the vision organizations that, or the vision papers that certain organizations are producing. And we want to help this further, driving greater presence, perhaps, at those organizations, but also ensuring that our research from our academia spills directly into the standards processes. So whether that's through national investments that we make as a program, or say our partners at the UK Space Agency or the European Space Agency, or investments that the research councils make to draw in some of the early TRL level research for 6G, international programs that Bernard has already mentioned, such as the Spark Networks and Services under Horizon Europe, or Eureka and Celtic Next investments that we're looking to make in the near future. And of course, through bilateral collaborations with other countries, be it some of the announcements that we've made with Japan, or the upcoming announcements that we're going to be making with other countries in Asia and the Americas. I want to be clear that collaboration is what's going to drive the industry and international partnerships to our own thinking of 6G. We're not going to underestimate the power of information sharing between nations, whether it's government, industry, or academia, for greater 6G R&D. As it picks up pace, we want to be at the forefront to allow for that systemic approach and that collaborative approach to actually be based in commercial reality. And so that's why we enjoy and welcome participating in events such as these, as to take a proactive approach of laying the foundation for where do we think there are current challenges, and how do we ensure that those current challenges actually lead to some of the research thinking that we need to take on board. And of course, to swap notes on some of the issues that matters most to us, as well as we approach the World Radio Conference in the next year. And of course, thank you again for listening, and I look forward to the conversation. So I hopefully was able to share that journey from 5G to 6G, and we're going to get into some of the meaty topics during the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for all the insights. And now we'll move on with Janne to take us with the Finland perspective.
Yes, nice to be here as well. I'm Janne Järven from Business Finland, and please, next slide. Very quickly, I'm representing a government organization that's the most important public funding agency for research, development, and innovation in Finland. So that's my perspective in this talk. So next slide, please. So and I think you can fill this screen with it's a animated slide, so you can do that. So I'm responsible for this digitalization mission that we have set up in Business Finland, and the idea is what you see on top, that we want to fast forward this digital transformation. So because we see that there's still many benefits for many companies from digitalization, and we see many industries that are still very much behind there, even in Finland, where we have a very good situation. But on this for this talk, I would like to focus on this competitive edges that we have defined in this mission that covers many areas that we have seen that we are in Finland. We are quite well known for our advances in telecommunications, and right now our focus is on 6G, but also with that there are many technologies underlying there, like cybersecurity, quantum is coming also, and so on. But this mission that we just started this January, it's gonna last until the end of this decade. So we are just in the beginning. But we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So one of the more well-known vehicles for 6G is the Finnish 6G flagship that had started already in 2018. And this is Academy of Finland effort to advance the fundamental research in 6G, and it's now entering its second phase, but already it has covered some really good results. There are about 400 different researchers on the topic, and there's been like 1,500 papers produced, 55 PhDs and so on. So there's a lot of momentum there going on with this international research that we are involved in Finland. But with the interest of time, I would like maybe even go forward now. We can come back to the topics later on, and so maybe in a nutshell, this is what represents our thinking on how we should approach 6G in Finland. So on top of there's this flagship that I just talked about, and in the bottom there's this Horizon Europe and other instruments that we are collaborating with, like the Hexa-X project that's led by Nokia, and there's now Hexa-X2 coming up, hopefully. But from the Business Finland perspective, we are supporting these activities very heavily, and also there's this what we will call a digital infrastructure testbed Finland, including many of the testbed initiatives that are undergoing with us. But also we are preparing new programs. That's the let's say the basic operating mode for Business Finland, that we start this collaborative projects together with the industry and academia, and the main focus typically is to do a pre-commercial applied research, so that the companies will work on their innovation projects together with the academia. but with this 6G, we see that we need to split this in two parts, and we are setting up this bridge project that's combining aspects of utilizing 5G and taking the benefits of the upcoming still upcoming 5G releases, but also focusing on the applied research for 6G and then the IPR building that we will need when we are entering the standardization phase of 6G in few years. So this with these activities, we believe that we can build the momentum towards 6G. But I agree with the previous speakers also that there's still lot to do with 5G also, as we know that it has not lived up to its full potential yet. But that's in brief from the Finnish side, and in interest of keeping the time, I think that I will end my short presentation here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janne. It's much appreciated. So we'll move on now with the Q&A, and I will kick off actually with one question from the audience, asking on, why is it important for a country to take early lead on 6G development? So maybe we can kick off with you, Arturo, on this.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, I think that the answer is quite clear, which is 5G has already been a geostrategic matter. All countries and regions, I would say, are competing to have very strong say in 5G technology. Why? Because 5G is both a big industrial sector in itself, so it matters to be competitive, but almost more important, 5G is absolutely relevant as enabler of the digitization of all the other sectors. And 6G is going to strengthen this, so to say, characteristic. 6G will be a strong business sector in itself, so it's good to remain competitive, but it is absolutely relevant horizontal enabler of all the other sectors, to digitize all the other sectors. And beyond that, it's becoming an absolutely critical infrastructure. So 5G and 6G more, it's the nervous system of the world. Everything, your thoughts, your control, your money, your economy, everything flows through these networks. And if these networks have any problem, then they are outdated, they are under attack, they are having any difficulty, you have a handicap. And then it's a significant problem. And since it's a big race, it's essential to be at the forefront. Arriving second is not good enough. You have to be among the first ones. I'm not saying to be first, but you have to be among the first ones, and you have to be at the forefront. So we cannot allow in Europe and in Spain in particular, Europe as one of the larger countries, to be left behind. That's basically my point of view. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Arturo. I can see Janne and then Mohammed.
Maybe I could add to that at least in Finland, I think we have a long established tradition in working with a different generation of telecommunications. So we have established institutions and networks for this. So I think that we are now quite excited to see the possibilities for 6G. And also, I think that we are quite delighted to see this international collaboration ongoing in this field. So this interests many, and I think that it's all of our interest in Europe, I think, to be at the forefront of this, so that we can make sure that the upcoming standards are such that we can all agree on. So
yeah, that's perfect, Janne. So Mohammed, go next.
I'd agree with Arturo and Janne. the reason why the UK is keen to sort of take a front foot in future networks, but also 5G research, is largely to do with 4 key thematic areas. And one is ensuring digital access and wireless connectivity, and generally connectivity across our geography. It's also to enable the carbon neutrality that we have envisioned into not just the next decade, but up until net zero for 2050. And that spills into how digital connectivity is used by other industrial sectors, but also how it's used for the energy utility sectors to maintain the energy grid systems. We see it as a driving force for both the security, resilience, and trust of the digital economy, but also of the infrastructure and the digital economy, the digital society that it enables. And lastly, it's to gain sovereignty in some of the technical components and the underlying technologies that are relying on and relied upon for the digital infrastructure. So for us, it's crucial that we invest and that we co-invest with industry and the academic researchers and the local governments.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. So I think I can follow up with a subsequent question and address it maybe to Bernard. So how do you see actually all these national 6G programs in Europe, Bernard, working hand in hand and supporting the European Commission plan to achieve a leadership in the global 6G race?
Yeah, thank you, Alain, for the question. On our side, first of all, we believe it's very important to be a part of the early, let's say, the early birds in this business, because we believe that when you are early, you are the earliest one to benefit from the innovation that stems. If you look at the countries, the nations which are deploying 5G today, they are basically those who started research very early in the process. So there is a kind of correlation between how early you invest and how early you reap the benefits of the investments. Now, from the perspective of the European ecosystem, let's say, we don't have the ambition to redo everything what is being done in the member states. There are very nice things which are happening in the member states that are very, let's say, very high level capabilities which are existing in member states. So we just want to piggyback on these developments. So we have our own framework which is opening opportunities for actors to develop bits and pieces of technology that probably they don't or that possibly they don't have the opportunity to develop at national level. But we want also to open the possibilities to escalate the nice developments at member state level to get them Europeanized and to bring them into test beds or to bring them into, let's say, pilots that can benefit from the whole European community in such a way that we can develop at some stage pan-European test beds. This is something which has not yet started. I think we have to have a more in-depth discussion with the member states, because all this is starting now, both in the member states and in Europe. But it's really part of our plans to try to leverage as much as we can, not in a complete bottom-up manner, but more maybe in a top-down manner. There is always the bottom-up approach where you leave it to industry to select in various calls what they pick from the German developments, what they pick from the Spanish developments, how they put this together, and they make a European proposal. This bottom-up approach works anyway. So but maybe we can structure it a little bit better without having any willingness to control what the member states are doing. And normally they don't like it, so we don't want to be intrusive with what the member states are doing. But if we can have a top-down approach to try to have a joint approach towards European test beds, European pilots, and how we bring this technology to field trials, I think that will be very useful from the European perspective to expose what is being done, the nice things which are being done at member states level, to widest communities and to widest usage capabilities.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Bernard. And perhaps on the same topic, address it to Arturo, actually, because if I'm not mistaken, Arturo, for Spain, you didn't have a predecessor 5G program like you have now for 6G. So the question here is, what motivated Spain to launch its own national 6G program, right? Have you not been happy to exclusively focus on the European program?
The point is the following. I will go top down. Now, I think Europe as a whole has somehow neglected ICT, information and communication technology. Europe is very, very strong in aerospace. Europe is very strong in nuclear technologies. It's very strong in transportation, both car making and railways, and it's very strong on a number of technologies. But in ICT, Europe has lagged behind, in spite of the efforts of DG Connect. So it's not because of DG Connect, it's in spite of the efforts of DG Connect. And I think it has been the member states who have favored more traditional industries. Why? Well, maybe because of inertia, whatever reason. I don't want to go into this. And now, Europe as a whole, on my view, has woke up. And now we realize that microprocessors and semiconductors are essential, and we cannot be dependent on this. So we have the CHIPS Act and strong movements by different member states to have a reasonably large, it's not to be autonomous. So it's not that Europe wants to be autonomous. We want a global world and we want to have trade and exchange, of course. But we cannot be so much dependent on microelectronics, first thing. Second thing, telecom equipment manufacturing. Now, we also have realized that telecom equipment manufacturing is a geostrategic asset. And we have to both have regulation on it and promote its technology very largely. Within this is where Spain has launched a specific 6G program, totally complementary, like I said, to the one of the commissions. Not that we were happy with the previous program, we think it was great, but we think we should also have additional support from the member states totally aligned with the Commission. In this case, we don't feel that the Commission is intrusive, quite the opposite. We think they are leading the way. Okay? And last thing, just to finish, we also think that Europe has been neglected in telecom operators' policies. We need to rethink our policies to telecom operators. So in my view, Europe is waking up in ICT in these three big areas, and Spain is part of this wake-up process. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Arturo. So maybe a question to Marcus here. I mean, we heard from Arturo, we heard from Mohammed, we heard from Yanni, how important it is in their national programs, standards and impacting standards, and obviously echoed by Bernard in his presentation too. So yes, ETSI is a global standard body, as you highlighted, Marcus, but ETSI is European. So can you explain a bit to us what kind of engagement is happening between ETSI and the national programs and the European Commission to, if you like, support all these initiatives in Europe to maximize impact on 6G standards?
Yeah, and thanks a lot for this question, Ala. And let me, before answering to this question, let me also come back to the earlier question, because this is really related. Why should you engage into 6G at an early stage? I think this is not only a question to to a member state on the global member state level, but it's also a question that actually every stakeholder can ask himself, right? Every company should ask this question. And I think in the end, it's very simple. You need to ask yourself the question, do you want to be a leader or do you want to be a follower, right? This is the point. And I think history has shown that as a leader, owning actually the technology, you're going to be in a much stronger position, right? As a follower, you will be always in a kind of secondary role, running behind those who are carrying the flag. And that's why I'm a strong believer, that not only on a state level, but even on a company level, you need to get engaged in an early stage, right? And then coming back to ETSI, you're absolutely right, Alain. Probably we can talk about this for a long time. ETSI is taking a kind of dual hat position, maybe even more than two hats, to be honest. On the one hand, ETSI is acting as an international standards developing organization, developing standards that are applied and successful on a worldwide scale. But then on the other hand, ETSI is of course an ESO, a European standards organization, supporting Europe in the implementation of European policy, right? and ETSI needs to satisfy both roles. This is very clear, and that is why we are currently in close contacts with the Commission, in particular in the context of the new EU standardization policy. It's currently very high on the agenda, right? But coming back again, how can researchers really like practically exploit the services of ETSI? I think, you know, I mean, we had very many success stories in the past that, for example, researchers were either identifying a, for example, industry specification group or technical committee that was kind of fitting their purposes, and it was possible to take work into an existing structure. If such an existing structure does not exist, ETSI is actually very willing, you know, to investigate the setup, for example, for new ISG. You know, that's what we did with a number of research projects. That's what we did with RIS, so this reconfigurable intelligence services, for example, very recently. So I think there is not a like one size fits all answer, Alain. I think we need to take a look at the research topic case by case, but I'm quite certain that we will find, I mean, a way forward as long there is willingness, you know, by experts to get engaged. So I hope that helps, Alain. Thank you.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, thank you very much, Marcus. I have one question actually to Mohammed. So the public-private partnership that actually was born here in Europe, right, with the 5G PPP activity, has been dubbed as a big success. And we have seen countries like United States of America, USA, following this very model with their 80s and Arturo, in his presentation earlier for the Spanish program on 6G, he kind of also followed pretty much the same model, right, for the European Commission 5G PPP. So that in the UK, as we appreciate, so the forward-looking research has been pretty much around universities and funding universities. So my question to you, how do you see the future of a potential public-private partnership here in the UK around 6G?
Thanks for the question, Alain. And I think you're right. I think what we've seen in the UK is there is strong academic research base for 6G, particularly sponsored or partially funded through the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. So one of the research councils that are there. The last numbers I've seen is that the UK research base has published quite a significant number of papers, and we're actually third in the world by relevant publications for 6G thematic areas. So quite a bit of early stage TRL level research. How does that translate into perhaps the commercialization of that research, perhaps into even patents of that research? And that's where we need to take a more coordinated partnership model. What we did with the UK's 5G testbeds and trials program was to pull some of that early stage research, de-risk the investment with potential customers and industry partnerships, and trial that in living laboratories. So businesses, perhaps the creative industries looking at broadcasting or perhaps even sporting environments, looking at 5G and adopting some of those technologies and other industrial technologies into living laboratory environments, building a commercial case and a business case for investment to then propagate that further into their business model. That seems to have worked really well at a national level in the UK for 5G. It's helped accelerate the process and deployment of 5G in the UK, and it's helped businesses, rather than the telco sector, businesses adopt some of those technologies at a quicker pace than they would have had that not been for that intervention. I think we're developing a similar model now in the UK, and that we've seen the benefit, and now what we're trying to do is work with industry to identify what those research priorities are, and where do we think those research priorities will actually lead to some of that commercialization. So that industry, government, and local authority partnership is paramount to what we can actually achieve together for the future networks for 6G research. And I'm sure that that also comes back to the patents that some of these researchers or these organizations will file. That comes back to the strength that we build and the investment that we're able to draw upon to actually see through early, perhaps, deployments of 6G as we did in 5G. So we are seeing other international programs, and particularly smart networks and services, providing us an avenue of doing that. We're looking at building UK capability, something similar to what Arturo mentioned that is taking place in Spain, to do that in the UK, to bring together that ecosystem. And our initial investment is looking to build what is the UK Telecoms Innovation Network, pulling together the various aspects of telecoms research that goes beyond just DCMS as a department, but pulling in our space colleagues, pulling in our defense colleagues, pulling in from our energy sector and quantum researchers, et cetera, to come together with a vision and exploit that vision for actual benefit to society. So hopefully that provides a bit more clarity in what the UK is doing. And of course, the wireless infrastructure strategy will publish some of that in the coming months.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mohammed. And I look forward to working with you in the UK in the same way I've been working with Bernard and Arturo in their respective programs, and also Janne in Finland. Okay, so our time is up. I would like actually to thank you very much for all the presentation and the insights that you provided on your programs and how we bring a global coordination around these programs for 6G. So thank you very much indeed, and enjoy the rest of the day.